almost all of you would know about Neelam ma'am. If not, so Neelam ma'am is an alumni of CLC Delhi, and she's been a practicing attorney for 23 years. In fact, when I started my practice, my first office was right next to hers in the High Court. She was the standing counsel of the MOEF sometime in 2011 till 2013, and during that time, she's argued a lot of important matters, ranging from the Kaziranga Park to illegal mining to the Western Ghats, and most recently, of course, the preservation of the lake at Purana Killa. The second moderator today is Mr. Amit Saxena, who's an advocate, who's also an alumni of CLC Delhi. He is currently the Joint Secretary, Delhi High Court Bar Association, so he might be a go-to person for all the lawyers or the budding lawyers here if they need any guidance, or you're looking for a mentor for various areas of law, or you're just getting you want an internship with someone, you want a job somewhere, so he might be able to help you with those things.
And session. The world is changing. It is virtual gatherings, virtual communication, all the way now. As you're all aware, we had celebrated the Earth Day just 2 days back on 22nd of April. This was a special Earth Day, not because this was the 50th anniversary of the Earth Day, but also because, as we can all see, Earth is rejoicing. COVID has brought about many changes in the way we live, the way we communicate, and it has brought something to cheer. The air is fresher, the rivers are getting cleaner, there is sound of sweet music in the air. The animals whose habitats we had snatched from them, they are now venturing into our habitats. So this COVID has brought about some kind of a reverse. COVID has put us all in lockdown. Almost all humanity is in lockdown. The humanity in lockdown has meant freedom for so many species. It has given a chance to our Mother Earth to heal itself. This is law of nature. And this law of nature has morphed. It has not only morphed, it has mocked all human-made laws to save the environment. With this, I will come to the topic of the day, which is environment laws, issues, and the role of NGT. I would like to take you through the development of various laws pertaining to environment, and thereafter I will discuss the role of NGT. So we start with the UN Conference on Human Development. This took place in Stockholm in 1972. And this conference is considered the Magna Carta on human environment. India having been a signatory to this conference, our parliament got into action and it enacted a couple of laws to save the environment, to save the water. Some of these I'll mention here. In 1974 came the Water Prevention and Pollution of Control Act. The parliament even went to the extent of amending the constitution in 1976, which we know as the 42nd amendment to the constitution. And the Articles 48 and 51A G were incorporated in the Constitution, which respectively cast an obligation on the state to protect the environment, as well as on all the citizens to protect the rivers, the lakes, the water, everything the nature has given us. With this amendment, India became the first constitution in the world to grant a constitutional status to environment protection. This was followed by the Forest Conservation Act 1980. Then came the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. And then followed by the most important act, the Environment Protection Act of 1986. While the Parliament was doing its job, the Supreme Court was not far behind. From 1986 onwards, the Supreme Court started advocating the need for establishing standalone environment courts. This MC Mehta judgment in 1986 to the AP Pollution Control Board judgment in 1991, the Supreme Court of the firm view that we need environment courts to tackle with the rising concerns, the rising issues of environment. In 1991, the Supreme Court also passed a landmark judgment interpreting the Article 21 of the Constitution of India. And it held that the right to life under Article 21 also includes right to enjoy pollution-free water and therefore pollution-free air. So these were some of the significant developments with respect to the environment protection in our country. Another UN conference happened in 1992, June 1992. This was the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development at Rio de Janeiro. With our Parliament and our Supreme Court advocating the need to protect the environment, finally we got a law which is known as the National Environment Appellate Authority Act 1997, which was brought in to adjudicate cases pertaining to environment. But the scope of this act was extremely limited. It was limited to the review of administrative decisions with respect to environment impact assessment. Now, with this limited scope, this act failed miserably to address the increasing environmental concerns, environment issues. As the development was happening, the issues were also rising. So the Parliament replaced this act with the present National Green Tribunal Act in 2010. This was the turning point in the administration of environment justice in our country. The NGT, the National Green Tribunal, was constituted on 18th October 2010, but it started functioning a little later, from July 2011. For whatever reasons, when NGT was constituted, it did not even have a proper place to function from. There was a temporary arrangement in a guest house, a forest guest house, which belonged to the Ministry of Environment in RK-Puram. And the two ports that the NGT was operating, they were being operated from two different locations, not in the same building. And these locations, they were about 3 kilometers apart. So you can imagine the difficulty, administrative problems with already insufficient administrative arrangements. But the cases started, they were being filed, so they were being adjudicated upon. Interestingly, the government, the Ministry of Environment, was somehow lax in providing the necessary administrative paraphernalia despite the intervention of the Supreme Court. Not only this, they did not even give sufficient counsels for representing them. There was just one counsel and 2 different locations to be handled by the council. I happened to be that council during that time. And it was extremely difficult phase for NGT, but NGT was not deterred. Supreme Court was supporting it. It was pressurizing, requesting, intervening to ask the government to give a decent space for the NGT to function elsewhere. That was taking time, but the efforts were continuously put in. Then Supreme Court took a very important step to ensure that the NGT comes up well. It passed an order on 9th August 2012. This was in the case of Bhopal Gas Pirit Mahila, wherein it directed that all cases which were pending in various high courts across the country with respect to environmental issues should all be transferred to NGT. This flooded NGT with cases. But the limitations of the administrative facilities arrangements continued. Justice Swatan Kumar was one of the judges who delivered this judgment. And soon thereafter, he took over as the chairperson of NGT in December 2012. This was again a turning point in the history of NGT. He changed the way in which the cases were being dealt with. He enlarged his jurisdiction under the Act to welcome one and all. Limitation didn't matter, environment mattered. Jurisdiction didn't matter, environment mattered to him. And finally, the NGT got a spacious place for itself on 18th October 2013, and which is the current Faridkot House. 18th October 2013 was the 3rd Founders Day of NGT when it shifted to the Faridkot House. And finally, both courts came to function at one place. I'm sharing this history with you because it's important to know how NGT has evolved in the last few years. And NGT, with its the way it was handling cases, the kind of judgments were being passed, it emerged as an important player in environment regulation in India. India became the 3rd country in the world after Australia and New Zealand to have a dedicated environment court with a wide jurisdiction to deal with the violations of the environment laws, to provide for compensation and restoration of ecology, applying the polluter pays principle, and to ensure and achieve sustainable development. I'll briefly mention some of the cases where the NGT applied the polluter pays principle. And these are landmark judgments. the Art of Living case, wherein they had damaged the Yamuna floodplain by holding some event there. So the court directed them to restore the dam and address the damage. There is this case of Alaknanda Hydel Power Project. Though the project was a very important project for generating electricity, the court, because of the damage that was caused in the process of construction of this project, the NGT imposed fine on the project proponent. Kaziranga Wildlife Sanctuary. We all know about this sanctuary and how important it is, especially for the rhinos. In this, there was a no development zone, but somehow there was a lot of activity like stone crushing, brick kilns, which were being carried out in this no development zone, and which was dangerous for the habitants of the Kaziranga National Park. A very detailed judgment was passed, and the NGT finally observed that because of the carelessness and negligence of not only the state government of Assam, but MOEF as well, these activities, illegal activities, were going on. So NGT imposed fine on both MOEF and as well as state of Assam. I think this was the first case wherein NGT imposed fine for violations, that too by the government. Then you have the Akshardham at Delhi. This was also constructed. It was constructed without getting an environment clearance. So this issue was raised before the NGT. And similar constructions also came up to be dealt with by NGT. And in almost all the cases, the NGT imposed fine. Then there are several landmark judgments on which highlight the principle of sustainable development. POSCO is one of the important cases here. This was a case which involved a huge investment by a South Korean company. This project was for construction of an integrated steel plant along with a captive power plant in Orissa. And the value of this project was almost as much as the GDP of Orissa. But because it affected the habitants, the habitat, the EC which was granted, the environment clearance which was granted by MOEF was suspended, and the NGT directed a review of the entire process of grant of EC. Then there is the project, Lavasa project in Pune. Then the biodiversity protection in Western Ghats. This affected many states, 6 states, and the NGT came down heavily on the various authorities as well as the MOEF for damaging the biodiversity in the Western Ghats. Then there is the case of sand mining. The rampant sand mining which was being carried out in the river beds, destroying the river, almost killing them. The NGT put a ban on these activities. In one of the sand mining cases, I was appointed a local commissioner and sent to Saharanpur. The site at Saharanpur was very disturbing. The sand mining had been done in such a manner in the river Yamuna by digging, huge well-like structures inside the river, which had almost killed the flow of the river. And the river was virtually dead in Saharanpur. And the NGT took a very serious view of this matter for this reason. So with all these judgments, the manner in which NGT has been dealing with the environment issues, NGT has proved itself to be an important milestone in the evolution of environmental justice, environmental jurisprudence in our country. While dealing with the cases, the NGT has taken a 360-degree view and not just confined itself to protecting environment, mitigating damage, achieving sustainable development, but it has also taken into account the social impacts of these construction activities. It was in the case of MP Patil versus Union of India that NGT not only invoked the ecological risks, but also social impact on the people, as people in large numbers were affected adversely by this project. So while reiterating principle of sustainable development, the tribunal stated that the resettlement and rehabilitation of the scheme for the displaced persons should also be of pertinent, it should be a pertinent aspect for consideration by the expert appraisal committee when it is making appraisal of the project for grant of EC. The judgment says, and I quote, "Poverty and degraded environment are closely interrelated, especially where people depend primarily on natural resources based on their immediate environment for their livelihood." NGT also did not hesitate in taking suo motu cognizance of incidents in the larger public interest. I'll mention a few of them. The most important of these was the Kedarnath, the devastating floods in Kedarnath in the summer of 2013, where so many people were killed, so many properties were destroyed, they were just washed away in the floods that engulfed Kedarnath. And that was the case where the NGT also issued directions as limiting the distance from the river banks for the construction activities to be carried out. Because in Kedarnath, what happened was just on the edge of the river, people had constructed houses and most of them got washed away. The fury of floods was so much, so severe, that it took all the buildings along the river banks, riverside, in its flow. Then there was this case of blackening of snow in Rohtang Pass. In Rohtang Pass, the pollution was so much that the snow there had become black, started getting black. And this was because of the unregulated and huge human traffic going to see Rohtang Pass. Again, the NGT appointed a commission. I was also a part of that commission to go visit and find ways and means of addressing this issue. And the NGT passed very, very effective directions to ensure that people who go to Rohtang Pass just see there, they do not look for food, they are not provided food there, and they do not pollute the surroundings. They used to throw plastic bottles, wrappers, and all this trash was removed from there. NGT, when realizing that there has been certain irregularities in granting of clearances, whether forest clearances or environment clearances, or there has been non-application of mind by the concerned committees, or matters which ought to have been taken into consideration have been ignored, it has not hesitated in suspending or cancelling those ECs, no matter how big or how important the project is. As I've already said, POSCO is an example. Then Kaziranga I have mentioned to you, Kedarnath floods. There is this ban on diesel vehicles in Delhi, which I'm sure everyone is aware of. This was also done to curb the pollution of the air in Delhi. We all know what happens to Delhi air around Diwali. It gets crazy. It's so difficult to breathe. Then NGT has also passed very effective and effective directions with respect to construction activities in the ecologically sensitive zones in and around the national parks. Though the Wildlife Protection Act is not within the jurisdiction of NGT, yet NGT has not hesitated in taking steps to ensure that the wildlife habitat is not damaged. It is protected. So NGT has, in the course of these years, become a weapon for saving the environment. In fact, somebody has said that it is the pinnacle of environment protection in India. Now, I mention all these things to highlight the kind of role that NGT is playing to protect our environment. Next, I'll come to the jurisdiction of NGT as provided in the National Green Tribunal Act 2010. NGT has been vested with two kinds of jurisdictions. One is original jurisdiction, which is section 14, which says that NGT shall have jurisdiction with respect to a substantial question of law arising out of the implementation of the enactments mentioned in Schedule 1 to the Act. Now, Schedule 1 mentions 7 enactments. And as per the NGT Act, the NGT has jurisdiction only with respect to these 7 acts. It's a different issue that the NGT has expanded its jurisdiction to deal with matters in the larger public interest. There is a limitation here, limitation of 60 days. It is the application for the requisite relief has to be filed within 16 days from the cause of action. And the NGT is vested with power to condone delay for another 60 days after expiry of the first period of 60 days. Then NGT has been vested with appellate jurisdiction under section 16 of the NGT Act. There are several clauses there which mention the orders against which an appeal can be filed before the NGT. Now, these appeals are provided against various orders passed by the authorities, appellate authorities, the boards constituted under the Air Pollution Act, the Water Pollution Act, and Water Pollution Cess Act. My apologies. And this also has provision for appeal against the orders passed under Section 2 of the Forest Conservation Act. Section 2A of the Forest Conservation Act says that any order passed under Section 2 is appealable to NGT. And the appeals are also provided against the directions passed under Section 5 of the Environment Protection Act, and the grant or refusal to grant EC by the concerned authorities. Now, out of these 7 acts, I will be touching only some of them today: the Environment Protection Act, Forest Conservation Act, and Air Pollution and Water Pollution Act to some extent. Then there is Section 15 of the NGT Act, which provides for compensation, payment of compensation, and restitution of ecology. Section 20 of the Act lays down the 3 principles of to be followed by NGT, the principles of the precautionary principle, the polluter pays principle, and the principle of sustainable development, which the NGTB has been applying in its various judgments. NGT also has the power to ensure compliance of its orders. And in case of any default or non-compliance, NGT has the power to impose penalty, and also there is a provision for punishment. Now taking the Forest Conservation Act. The Forest Conservation Act provides in section 2 that in case any forest land is diverted for any other use, then it can only be done with the prior approval of the central government. Now, this prior approval of the central government was being granted in accordance with the guidelines which the MOEF had made. At that time, the ministry was known as Ministry of Environment and Forest alone. The climate change has been added later. So MOEF, the central government was granting approval for forest clearances in 2 stages. The stage 1 approval and the stage 2 approval. Now, stage 1 approval is basically the land is allocated, granted, the cost of the land, and what is the probable damage, how many trees will be cut, the net present value of those trees, and the compensatory provision for compensatory afforestation elsewhere, in accordance with the guidelines which have been fixed by the Ministry of Environment. Now, once these preliminary things are done, the NPV value is deposited by the project proponent and all, then the stage 2 approval is granted, which covers the construction and operation of the project. Initially, when NGT started functioning, what was happening was that all these approvals immediately were being challenged before the court. Stage 1 approval is also being challenged, stage 2 approval is also being challenged. So an issue came up before the NGT as to which is the order under section 2 against which an appeal can be filed before the NGT under section 16. Initially, a 2-judge bench took a decision that the stage 1 approval and stage 2 approvals cannot be challenged. The order referred to in section 2 is the order which is ultimately passed by the state government, because all lands come in the jurisdiction of the states. The central government has no jurisdiction over land. So finally, final order, because the section clearly says no order shall be passed, the order shall be passed after the prior approval of the central government. So only prior approval of the central government is required to pass the necessary order, which order is passed by the state government. So when this decision was taken by NGT that ultimate order passed by the state government can only be appealed, the NGT put a query to everybody as to what orders were being passed under section 2 by the various states. And interestingly, it was revealed that not many states were passing those orders. Only a couple of states, 2-3 states had passed those section 2 orders. Anyways, this decision was then reconsidered by Justice Swatantra Kumar by a larger bench. He was heading the bench, and they also came to the same conclusion that yes, it is only the order passed by the state government which can be appealed against. So this brought down a lot of pendency litigation in NGT. These forest clearances are also granted after due consideration. There is a procedure in the rules. The authorities are mentioned who have to investigate and file reports whether the forest can be diverted or not. The use of the forest can be diverted or not. whether it is needed, how much, what conditions should be imposed, and there are requisite conditions imposed for compliance by the project proponent. This is necessary to reduce the damage being caused to the forest land. As it is, the forest land is diminishing in our country. Similarly, the environment clearances are also passed after due appraisal by expert committees, which are appointed by the government. There are various stages for grant of these environment clearances. The procedure is provided in the Environment Impact Notification, EIA notification of 2006, in which continuous amendments are being made to keep pace with the changing times. So this procedure, which is prescribed in the EIA notification, provides for screening, scoping, public hearing. Public hearing is important for the people who get affected by these projects. They are the ones who know their area the best, who know what is best for their area. So therefore, a lot of importance is given to public hearing in the grant of these clearances. I'll briefly refer to a provision of the Air Prevention Act, Section 21, because that provides for the consent which is to be obtained to establish or to operate a unit. Similarly, Section 25 of the Water Protection Act also provides for this consent. These consents are important because without these consents, no unit can start operations. Now here I want to mention that in most of these cases, this is the point of concern. We accuse the industries of polluting, which they undoubtedly are. But when I was handling these cases in the ministry, even on behalf of MOEF, I realized that most of the state governments, when they designate industrial areas for setting up industries, what is happening is that as soon as the industries are allotted, there is pressure put on the industries to start construction because there's a timeline within which they have to construct. Now, once they construct, then there's a timeline that you have to start operations. But the government and the authorities, concerned authorities, including the corporations and all, they don't do their job. There is no provision for water supply made. There is no provision for electricity made. There is no provision for sewage disposal made. But the industry is bound to start construction in order to avoid more penalties. So how does one balance this? The industry gets the consent to operate, gets the consent to establish, consent to operate. They start operations because they have no other way. Otherwise, they pay huge penalties. So what will the industry do? How will they get the water? How will they get the electricity? How are they going to discharge the effluents? This is where the biggest problem arises. And this is where we need to, the government, even the NGT needs to take notice and issue directions. There are certain cases, the NGT has said that because you are extracting groundwater, the groundwater extraction has been banned. Because you are extracting groundwater, which is depleting, you are causing pollution. So you cannot do that. And therefore, you don't have a source of water, you can't operate. So when the NGT is told that how do I operate if I don't take underground water, because the corporation, the authorities are not providing me the water supply. So the question which is put by the NGT is that you tell me the source of water. If you have a source of water, I will allow you to operate. Now, what is this? Who is responsible for this mess? This question needs to be addressed. Now, these are the laws, the 7 enactments which NGT has jurisdiction on. Despite these laws, which came into operation from 1971-4 onwards, the Water Act came in 1974, Environment Act came in 1980, the Air Pollution Act came in 1981, the Forest Act came in 1980, Environment Protection Act came in 1986. So these are almost all more than 40 years old. What has been the benefit of these acts? Where have we reached? Despite such good enactments which our country has, the natural bounty of India is deteriorating. The underground water is getting polluted more and more by the day and depleting. The air is foul. Forests are disappearing. So rivers are dying. NGT, despite its best efforts, could not get the Ganga clean. Yamuna has not been clean, despite thousands of crores of rupees having been deployed to achieve that. And in one stroke, COVID has done what all these years we could not do. The rivers have become cleaner, air has become fresher, as I mentioned earlier. So all this shows that it is basically the industry which is polluting our water bodies, which is polluting our underground water, coupled with the domestic waste, the agricultural practices, so on and so forth. There is a need for more awareness. I have no hesitation in sharing with you that in 2011, when I became the counsel for MOEF, and the first day I appeared in NGT, I was clueless. I was just sent to assist the court the first day, because I think there was just 2 matters, and by the time I reached there, the matters got over. But I was clueless. I didn't know what this Environment Protection Act is. I was not aware of this Air Pollution Act. So the point is that we need to create more awareness. Information needs to be shared. Even the industrial units, which have big legal teams and people to assist them, they are not aware about the compliances. So there is a need to ensure compliances by one and all. And this cheer that we have got now from the nature, should we not see that it is not wasted? Lockdown has certainly brought some cheer. COVID has certainly a plus side to it as far as environment is concerned. The message is loud and clear. We can still act. So let's cherish our Mother Earth. Let's protect her. Thank you so much.
So the first question is, did being an environmental lawyer come out of your passion, or like was it a matter of fate? Like how did you go about being empaneled with MOEF? Like was it a matter of chance, or did you really want to do it?
It was will granted to me by God. I wanted to do something for the environment, but I didn't know how to go about it. And this was just by chance that I was asked. I was actually asked to go to the NGT by one of the ASGs at that time. because there was nobody representing MOF. MOF had not appointed any council. And there was no looking back. And I'm really happy that I was a part of that phase of the growth of NGT.
Now, switching on to Amit Saxena, he also has a question.
Yeah, sure.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Ma'am, wonderful things that you have said about why NGT, why did we require NGT.
Thank you.
But at the same time, my question would be, isn't NGT also a hurdle for development? You also raked up the question, yes, a lot needs to be done. The government provides you spaces, may not give you water, may not give you electricity. But development has its cost.
Yeah,
I have to set up a factory. I have to work. I have to provide employment to laborers. There's so much thing industry does, and being a developing country as we are, so I would initially also have a mindset that NGT, yes, it's a hurdle to my industrial development of the country. Environment, at what cost are we looking at? Yes, I'm loving the atmosphere outside. I can see the sky again. I can see the water bodies are flowing again, clean, much cleaner. But at the same time, my petrol car will be over in 15 years. A diesel car would be over in 10 years. How do we have to again, don't you think we have to devise some ways where both development as well as environment have to be taken into stride? Because the moment you go to NGT, they're with a closed mind, no, everything about environment. But India is a developing country, we have to look after our industries as well. What is your take on it?
Are you talking about the present situation in NGT?
Overall, yes, present included.
See, you yourself mentioned the principle of sustainable development.
Yes.
Development and environment hand in hand. So, see, industry, yes, we need certain things. We can't go back to the, good old candle days or those lantern or go to the Balgadi. We need our cars. We need electricity. There is no doubt about it. But at what cost? Should we consume everything and leave nothing for our next generation? That cannot be. Okay. So how do you balance it out? It is a very, very difficult thing of balancing this. Yes, I agree with you. The NGT should do that, and it is done in many cases. Certain cases have happened, yes, where the development has been affected, rightly or wrongly, it has been affected. But the point is, the balancing act has to be done. We need development. We need certain things. We can't do without it. But we cannot deprive this need for the future generations also. They also have to meet their needs from the same environment. So we can't kill the rivers. We can't kill the forests in the name of development.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you everyone for joining us. See you soon in the next webinar.